The courtroom was silent until the moment Wendy's voice cracked. Cameras clicked, reporters gasped, and for the first time, the so-called professor of integrity couldn't find her words. The judge's tone was sharp, echoing through the marble walls. "Dr. Osefo, are you aware of the funds transferred to your offshore account?" In that instant, her entire image, built on elegance, education, and power, shattered like glass. But it wasn't just the money. What came next left everyone frozen. The prosecution slid a folder across the table, one marked confidential. Inside were names, familiar ones, producers, political donors, even someone from her own circle. Wendy's hands trembled, her lips forming silent words of denial. Outside, social media was already exploding with one question: how deep does her corruption go? And just when it seemed it couldn't get worse, one voice note changed everything. They said she was the woman who had it all, a respected professor, a mother, a reality TV star who spoke about ethics and empowerment. But that image was only half the truth. Behind the bright lights of the Real Housewives of Potomac, Wendy Osefo was fighting a battle that no one saw coming. It started months before the trial, when a quiet rumor began to spread among the production crew. A producer, who once called her the most calculated woman on the show, whispered that Wendy had been moving large sums of money through her charity accounts. No one took it seriously, not until the screenshots appeared. Bank transfers, coded messages, and a mysterious email that said, "Keep the offshore details out of sight until next quarter." Inside sources claimed that Bravo executives were panicking. One even said, "We can't afford another scandal like this, not after the ratings drop." But by then, it was too late. The media had caught on, and the whispers turned into headlines. Fans who once admired Wendy's confidence started asking, was it all just a performance? When the trial began, Wendy arrived in her signature suit, chin high, pretending nothing could break her. But the tension in the courtroom told another story. Her husband, Edward, sat 2 rows behind, silent, avoiding her eyes. Every few minutes, he rubbed his hands together, a nervous tick that didn't go unnoticed. Then the prosecution dropped the first bombshell, documents linking her charity, Empowered Women Foundation, to a series of offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. The room buzzed with disbelief. Wendy's attorney tried to object, but the judge allowed it. A witness took the stand, a former assistant, trembling, voice cracking as she said, "Dr. Osefo made me process the wire transfers. She said it was just for tax purposes, but I knew something wasn't right." Wendy's jaw tightened, her voice low but fierce. "That's a lie. You're twisting everything for attention." The assistant looked straight at her. "Then why did you tell me to delete the transaction logs?" The courtroom fell silent. Even the clicking of cameras stopped for a second. Outside, fans gathered holding signs, some in support, others furious. One shouted, "We believed in you, Wendy," while another yelled, "You scammed your own students." Clips of her past speeches about honesty, empowerment, and leadership began trending again, but this time under hashtags like #WendyExposed and #FraudInHeels. By the third day, new evidence emerged, a message chain between Wendy and a producer who allegedly helped her reroute donations. In one text, Wendy wrote, "Make sure they never find the Cayman account. That's my lifeline." Her team denied it was authentic, claiming the screenshots were fabricated. But the prosecution had something even worse, a voice note. A low-quality recording played in court, and Wendy's voice was unmistakable. Transfer it to the shell company. If the press asks, say it's a sponsorship. The audio echoed through the courtroom. Wendy froze. Her attorney reached out, whispering, "Don't react." But the damage was done. The judge stared at her over his glasses. "Dr. Osefo, this evidence suggests intentional deception. Do you have anything to say before we proceed?" Her lips parted, but no words came out. And then, just when everyone thought it was over, another name surfaced. One connected to someone powerful. Someone from within the show itself. That was the moment Wendy's calm cracked, because she knew what was coming next. The courtroom was already tense, but what happened next turned it into chaos. When the prosecutor mentioned the name Monique Samuels, Wendy's entire demeanor changed. Her eyes widened, and for the first time since the trial began, she looked afraid. The whispers started instantly. Monique, her former castmate, her rival, had been called as a surprise witness. As Monique walked in, calm but sharp, the cameras flashed. You could almost feel the air tighten. The judge asked her to take the stand, and Monique simply said, "I didn't come here for revenge. I came here for the truth." According to leaked pretrial notes later shared online, Monique had submitted a string of private messages between Wendy and a Bravo executive discussing how to divert funds from a women's empowerment project into a personal media investment. In one message, Wendy allegedly wrote, "No one needs to know how the funding was redirected. Just make sure Monique never finds out." The courtroom gasped when that line was read aloud. Wendy's lawyer jumped up, objecting furiously, claiming the DMs were fabricated for drama. But Monique stayed composed. She turned toward Wendy and said, "You used everyone, the fans, the students, even us on that show, just to make yourself look perfect. But the receipts don't lie." Online, social media exploded. Fans flooded X and TikTok with hashtags like #MoniqueSpokeFacts and #WendyFallFromGrace. Clips of Wendy defending her integrity in old reunion episodes started resurfacing, painfully ironic now that the same woman who once prided herself on honesty was being accused of laundering charity money. Then came the second twist, a leaked phone call. Prosecutors played it in court, and the audio silenced everyone. You could hear Wendy's voice, shaky but clear, saying, "Transfer it before they audit." Edward's nervous, but if he talks, he goes down too. All eyes turned to Edward. He looked pale, sweating, staring at the floor. The judge demanded clarity. "Is that your voice, Dr. Osefo?" Wendy stammered, "It's edited. They're framing me." But Edward didn't back her up. He just whispered, "I can't do this anymore." Within minutes, the prosecutor revealed that Edward had already given a partial statement, cutting a deal in exchange for leniency. He had confirmed that Wendy managed multiple offshore accounts under fake charitable partnerships, moving over $2.7 million in donations over 3 years. Wendy turned to him, her voice breaking. "You betrayed me? After everything?" Edward didn't look up. "You betrayed yourself." Her sob echoed through the courtroom. Even Monique, despite everything, looked shaken for a moment. Outside, reporters were waiting. One viral headline read, "Real Housewives star's husband turns state witness. Wendy's empire collapses live in court." And if that wasn't enough, another layer unraveled. A former producer from The Real Housewives of Potomac leaked an internal memo showing Bravo executives had been aware of financial irregularities for months, but chose to stay silent to protect the show's image. That revelation hit the entertainment world like a bomb. Fans began turning on the network too, demanding accountability. One fan tweeted, "They built her up knowing she was lying to us. We deserve the truth." By the end of the 4th day, Wendy's defense was in ruins. The judge called for a recess, but before leaving, he made a statement that no one could forget. When the truth hides behind power and privilege, justice takes its time, but it always arrives. The cameras caught Wendy's face at that moment, pale, distant, eyes full of disbelief. And just when it seemed the storm had peaked, the prosecutor hinted that there was still one more piece of evidence, something so personal and so damaging it would change everything about the case. The room fell silent. Even Monique looked confused. The judge leaned forward. "We'll reconvene tomorrow morning. What happens next will decide everything." And as Wendy was escorted out, reporters shouted after her, asking if she had anything to say. She paused, tears streaking down her face, and whispered just loud enough for the microphones to catch. "They think they know everything, but they don't know who I really am." That line alone set the internet on fire. No one knew what she meant. But everyone knew, the next day, the truth would either destroy her forever or expose someone even bigger. When the court reconvened the next morning, the tension was so heavy it was almost physical. The judge's gavel echoed like thunder, but Wendy Osefo sat still, motionless, her hands trembling slightly against the polished wood of the defense table. Everyone knew this was it. The prosecution had promised one final reveal, something that would connect every missing piece. The lead prosecutor stood up, voice steady. "Your Honor, we have recovered a private email chain between Dr. Osefo and a government ethics advisor, dated 14 months ago." The courtroom went dead silent. Wendy closed her eyes as if bracing for impact. The prosecutor continued reading aloud. "Funds received under the Women's Empowerment Initiative have been successfully reallocated. Offshore status confirmed. Confidential cooperation with Maryland Council members proceeding as planned." And then came the shocker, the advisor's name. It wasn't just a random official. It was a sitting state senator. Gasps rippled across the room. Even Monique, sitting in the gallery, covered her mouth in disbelief. The same senator who had publicly praised Wendy for her integrity and leadership was now implicated in laundering her fake charity funds. Wendy's lawyer whispered frantically, "Don't say a word," but it was too late. Wendy snapped. Her voice broke the silence. "You think I did this alone? You think they didn't use me? I was the face, that's all. They wanted someone clean to carry their dirt." The judge slammed the gavel. "Dr. Osefo, control yourself." But she couldn't stop. She stood up, crying, her voice shaking between anger and despair. "They told me to smile for the cameras, to play the smart professor, the perfect mother. And I did it. I did it because I thought it would protect my family. But they lied. Everyone lied." Her lawyer tried to pull her down, but the damage was done. The courtroom was in chaos. Outside, the media went wild. Wendy names political insider in explosive court meltdown flashed across every headline within minutes. Hashtags like hashtag Wendy exposed the system and hashtag housewife versus state began trending worldwide. But inside, something broke inside Wendy. The once composed professor who could debate anyone into silence now looked like a ghost. She turned to Edward, her husband, her betrayer, her mirror. Her voice barely a whisper. "Did you know? Did you know they'd turn on me too?" He didn't answer. He just lowered his head. And then, the final blow. The prosecutor revealed a recorded voicemail. A man's voice, calm, confident, and unmistakably political, makes sure she takes the fall. "The public trusts her image. Once this is over, we'll clean up the rest." The senator's voice. The courtroom erupted. Wendy stared blankly ahead, whispering to herself, "So it was never about me." Monique stood up from the gallery, eyes wet but fierce. "Now you know how it feels," she murmured, almost too quietly for anyone to hear. By the end of the session, the judge announced a new motion to open an investigation into the senator's involvement. But Wendy's charges would remain. The law didn't forgive easily. As the bailiffs escorted her out, Wendy looked back one last time at the flashing lights, the murmuring crowd, the cameras waiting for her downfall. She said one sentence that would echo across every social feed for days. "They wanted a villain, and I gave them one." That moment became iconic, replayed, remixed, dissected. Some said it was her final act of defiance. Others called it confession. But behind the headlines, something darker lingered. Because late that night, an anonymous account posted a file labeled Osefo Archive, unreleased evidence. The file vanished within hours, deleted before most people could even open it. Only one screenshot survived, a blurred image of Wendy shaking hands with the senator. The caption underneath read, "The truth didn't end in court." It started there. And with that, the story was no longer just about Wendy Osefo. It had become something bigger, a mystery tangled between fame, politics, and betrayal. A haunting question echoed online long after the trial ended. Did Wendy expose corruption, or just become another pawn in it? She said it herself. "They wanted a villain, and I gave them one." That single line flipped everything. The courtroom was stunned, the headlines were instant, and the world watched a woman unravel under the weight of secrets far bigger than her. But what if Wendy wasn't lying? What if she really was the scapegoat in a game of power and politics, where her downfall was planned from the start? Because just hours after her outburst, that mysterious file, the Osefo Archive, appeared online and vanished just as fast. Who uploaded it? Why did it disappear? And most importantly, what was inside? Some say it contained the proof she was framed. Others say it held the names of every politician tied to the scheme. This story isn't over, not even close. If you want to hear the leaked voicemail and what came after, comment for the next video.